It occurred to me that it would be perhaps helpful if I shared with you the way that Abdul Baha answered a question. The question put to him was that all of us, according to what Abdul Baha had said in his prayers, we are all created from the same stock. We are all human beings and we are created by Him. And therefore, why is it that certain people, because they have better opportunities than others, for example, they are rich, they are born rich, they have facilities and opportunities for development, for better education, so they have possibilities for advancement, for services, and so on. Whereas others who are born in, let us say, undeveloped countries economically, or where facilities are not existent, that they don't have the opportunities that the first group has. And as a result, they are not able to accomplish much in this world. They accomplish less. And now how is this in the next world? Because of those opportunities that seem to be just by chance, how is it that in the next world, what happens? You know, it's a very, very interesting question. Abdul Baha's answer was like this, and I want you to follow his analogy. He says, think of a frame, a loom, where carpets or pieces of cloth are being woven. There are vertical lines, vertical threads, and vertical threads and horizontal threads. Now, the threads, the quality of the thread are not always the same. Some may be straw, some may be cloth, cotton, poor cotton, some may be fine cotton, some may be wool, some may be silk. So the opportunities are different. Possibilities are different. Right. Then he said that he knows what he has given. He knows that to this person he has only given very rough cloth, and to the other person he has given silken thread. What he is interested in is the design, what we do with our threads, the design that we weave into this piece of material. That's what he is interested in. Roya Khanam used to say that once she went to the British Museum and she saw that in one corner of the museum there was a beautiful piece of cloth, but when she came closer to it, it's very rough cloth. But the design was beautiful. So beautiful that the British Museum had chosen a corner and put lights on this piece of cloth so that people would see how beautiful this design is. It was the work of some Indian tribeswomen somewhere in the Western Hemisphere. So that's what God is interested in. He knows what He has given us, but He says, what is your design? Now, a rough cotton piece of cloth may have a very beautiful design, but a silken piece of cloth may have a very ugly design. The fact that He has given these opportunities is not the deciding factor in the next world. In the next world, what counts is what the design is and how the design is. And that is our choice. It is our willpower, our choices, our decisions in life. I thought this helped me a great deal to understand. Of course, if it is a piece of cloth and if the design is beautiful, so much the better, obviously. Please share your experiences as a pioneer in Africa. Well, it's impossible for me to say everything, but it just shows you how it is important to simplify things rather than complicate them. It was in the early years when we were teaching in the villages, and we didn't have any Baha'i center or anything. We used to teach under trees, mavulu trees, big, tall trees, and so on. So the people would gather, and whoever was the pioneer would stand up and talk, and the translator was there. So I happened to be the speaker at that time, on this particular occasion. And I was introducing the principles of the faith. And then I said this sentence: since God is one, and mankind in this world is one, and since truth is one, religion must be one. That was my sentence. Everybody now is listening, waiting for the translator. And the translator was a very intelligent, he had already become a Baha'i, and he was a very intelligent young man. He was the cousin of Mr. Olinga. And he came close to me and he said, they called me there Mr. Ali. So he said, Mr. Ali, if I translate this, they will not understand it. Do you mind if I do it our way so that they understand it better? I said, please go ahead. So everybody is watching what's happening between this white man and his translator, So finally, he speaks. He said, our friend is asking you a number of questions. He wants to know what your answer is. And he wants you to hear what you answer. He said, he wants to know, in your opinion, how many gods there is in the world. Is there one God? Are there two gods? Or are there three gods? Everybody said, one, in chorus. His second question is that this world in which we live, and the people in which we are all over the world, are we one people? Are we two people? Are we three people? Everybody said, one. So far, so good. Then he said, he has a third question. He wants to know if truth is one thing, or it can be two things and three things. He said, no, one, everybody said. He says, now he has the last question. He wants to know, now that God is one, now that humanity is one, now that truth is one, in your opinion, religion should be one, two, or three? Everybody said, one. It was clear. If he had translated what I had said, it would have been just nothing. So just one sentence. They would forget all about it. But the way he invited everybody to participate made everybody clearly to understand what the logic was. It's impossible to give all the details, so we move on. I would like to know if the beloved guardian recited or chanted the Arabic writings with Persian accent or Arabic accent. There is a big difference between the two, very big difference. If you know some Arabic or you know some Persian, you know the difference. It's different. The pronunciation is different. The tone is different. Everything is different. Shoghi Effendi always chanted the Persian way. He chanted Persian in the Persian way. He chanted Arabic in the Persian way, not with the Arabic way. Now, I don't say that the Arabic way is not beautiful. It is very beautiful. But it was logical for him to do it in the Persian way. And there is a difference between the way you pronounce these words. For example, I'll give you an example. To hit, the Arab, the true way of pronouncing is daraba. Persian way is zaraba. A big difference. You see? So, The pronunciation is very important for Arabs. It is very important for Persians. Now, however, having said this, I must also say, I was present many times in the presence of Shoghi Effendi when there were Egyptian pilgrims who came. He would call on Egyptian pilgrims, or Iraqi pilgrims, or Jordanian pilgrims. He would say, chant a prayer. Now, they are Arabs, pure Arabs. So they chant. Some of them chant in a very poor way. Now, Shoghi Effendi said, when Arabic is being chanted by Arabs, they should follow the same style of chanting that the scholars in Egypt use for the Quran. In Arabic, it is called tajweed. In Persian, we call it tajweed. Tajweed has a special style of chanting. And they believe that it has been carried from generation to generation from the way that Muhammad taught his disciples to chant. Therefore, they do it that way. And Shoghi Effendi used to confirm that when you chant to the Arabs, when you chant, follow the tajweed that you find in the University of Azhar in Cairo. Follow that, which is pure Arabic intonation. No Persian in it at all. This is chanting Arabic by Arabs. But when he chanted Arabic, he as a Persian, it was Persian style. What happens to the ego after we die? Does the ego go into the next world? Thank God it does not. Yeah, the ego is buried with the same body in the grave. Finished. In the next world, there are no tests. This question was put to Abdul Baha, and he answered, no tests. Tests are here. And tests stem from the ego. Nothing else. It is Satan. Baha'u'llah makes it very clear. He said, the Satan that we read in the writing is the ego. There's no such creature as a Satan. Nothing. These analogies are given for us to understand. According to the New Testament, the devil comes and takes the Son of God, Christ, up on a highest mountain. He tells him, look, I'll give you all this. This will be yours. Just follow me. Who's saying this? Jesus Christ himself. And then Jesus looks around. He says, no, I don't want that. Now, how can this be actually true? How is it possible for Satan to come and take the Son of God, who is the manifestation of God, carry him up against maybe his will, take him up on a mountain and show him everything, and then ask him I will give it to you, I own this, I give it to you? Obviously, this is the story. Satan is the ego, nothing else. The ego comes and talks to you, orders you, commands you, insists, makes things that are bad look good, makes things that are twisted and crooked straight, and makes straight look crooked. In one of his statements, Abdul Baha says, the self, or the ego, is like a well. You go inside it, you don't see anything. You lose your perspective. You lose your judgment. What appears to be bad to you it may appear to be good. That's what ego does. We have to be watchful. Watch over ourselves all the time, through prayer, through conscious effort. When I was on pilgrimage, we had just received in Kampala a cable from Shoghi Effendi in answer to a cable that the NSA had sent to Shoghi Effendi. It was the practice of that National Assembly of Central and East Africa not to wait for minutes to be sent to the beloved guardian, because it would take time to type, to have it double-checked and approved and so on. It would be about at least 3 weeks, and by the time it's posted, it will be 4 weeks. So in order to keep him au courant of what was happening currently, so it was the practice of the NSA to send a cable to Shoghi Effendi. The main decisions over the weekend of the National Assembly. This. That particular meeting, message went. The answer came immediately. The NSA was still meeting. The answer was very brief. Praying holy shrines, promotion, teaching work. Signed, Shoghi. Obviously, because the cable we had sent was all about administrative affairs, administrative details. We're going to have a conference there, we're going to have a publication here, we're going to contact the media there, we're planning to meet the government officials in another place. Nothing about the teaching work. We realized our mistake. Now, just the same, the following day I traveled. I went, it was my time to go on pilgrimage. You know, Shoghi Effendi, one of the first things he told me, he said, did the National Assembly understand my hint? I said, yes. Then he said, what is the use of orderliness if there is no teaching? What is the use? He's interested in the teaching work. And he was slapping us with his cable. Kindly, gently, but it was a slap. Then he says, how many African believers are there on the National Spiritual Assembly? Of course, he knew I had sent him a report. He wants to introduce the subject. With great embarrassment, I said, 3 African believers and 6 pioneers. He said, this is not good. That was another slap. He said, the pioneers should be in the minority. Although they are a minority, and according to Baha'i principles, the minority should be given preference. But in this case, I say that they are not minority in that sense, because they don't belong to that country. African believers, the local believers, have precedence. Then he said put another question. He said, do the African members of the National Assembly participate in the consultation? Now, the reality was that whenever there was a new item to be discussed, the first were the pioneers to speak. All the pioneers were ready to speak. And when they spoke, he gives one opinion, another pioneer gives another opinion. Gradually, it's all discussion between the 6 members. And some of us are even rude, impolite towards each other. For example, what are you talking about? What kind of... This is nonsense what you are saying. And the poor African members are sitting there. What is happening? Shoghi Effendi is asking me, what is the situation? How could I explain this? I did not know how to explain this. And I'm sure he must have realized that I was passing through a moment of hesitation. I finally said, the beloved guardian knows very well the enthusiasm of the pioneers. said, this is not good. He said, what the chairman should do is first to call on the African members to speak and not allow the others to speak. After they have expressed their opinion, then the pioneers could have their chance to speak. As it was, they were totally silent. And it was the pioneers exchanging and fighting. And finally, the Africans would say, yes, I think such and such a suggestion given by so-and-so is the better. Very quietly, very politely. I remember in one case, one of the pioneers said, he interrupted the poor African member. He said, why did you say the suggestion made by Mr. So-and-so? He did not make this suggestion, I made the suggestion. You should have mentioned my name. Wow. Look at the ego. It's terrible. Now, I didn't say any of these things to show you offended. I said that sentence, that's all. Then he said, no. And then he told me how it should be. So all these things, yeah. Then finally he said, the National Assembly received, I suppose, the design of the temple of Kampala that I sent to them. I said, yes. He didn't say, did the National Assembly like the design? He said, did the African members of the National Assembly like the design? Why is it that God chooses certain people to become Baha'is and believe in Him? Of course, we have statements to that effect, that God chooses. Many are called, but few are chosen. Why does God choose? Why isn't He for everybody? The answer is very clear. A teacher has a class. He has 20 students. He's a very good teacher. He loves all the students equally. He wants all of them to pass because he loves them all. But he knows that X, Y, and Z will not be able to pass. They will fail in the exam. He knows because their work during the year makes it very clear. And he equally knows that another 2 or 3 are going to shine and do their work and their year with high distinction. He knows that too. But is he the cause that some are failing and some are doing well, or some are doing even better and very well? No. The students themselves have decided. Not he. He wants all of them. God is waiting for all humanity to become Baha'is. But He knows that there is very few who are truly receptive. The others are swamped in materialism. They have become blind. They don't feel. They are like stones instead of being like sponges. They are like rocks. They have become a part of the mineral world instead of being part of the human world. He knows that. So, the responsibility is the individual, but the knowledge of God does not cause them to fail. The election, Shoghi Effendi is quoted, the election of the International House of Justice and its establishment in the Holy Land, the spiritual and administrative center of the Baha'i world, together with the formation of its auxiliary branches and subsidiary institutions. Question: I assume that the national and local assemblies are the subsidiary institutions of the House of Justice. What are its auxiliary branches? My dear friend, you are free to think that way. God bless you. But when I read this, I understand it in a different way. I think the auxiliary branches are national assemblies and local spiritual assemblies. They are branches out in the world. The subsidiary institutions refer to the buildings around the ark. Those are the subsidiary institutions of the Universal House of Justice. And its branches are national assemblies and local assemblies. This is my personal opinion. My dear friend, you are free to think this way as you like. Shoghi Effendi wrote, and as the Baha'i faith permeates the masses of the people of East and West, and its truth is embraced by the majority of the peoples of a number of the sovereign states of the world, will the Universal House of Justice attain the plenitude of its power and exercise as the supreme organ of the Baha'i Commonwealth all the rights, the duties and responsibilities incumbent upon the world's future superstate. Question: why does the House attain the plenitude of its power when the Baha'is are in a majority of only a number of the world's nations, instead of when the Baha'is constitute a majority of all the nations of the world? I fully appreciate the question, and I believe I understand it. You see, when Shoghi Effendi was writing to the West, he only refers to two types of peace: the lesser peace and the most great peace. But this is to simplify things. He is giving us the beginning and the end. But when you read the writings of Shoghi Effendi, you see that there are three types of peace, not two. And in Persian, it is Sulh-e-Asghar for the lesser peace, the great peace as translated by Shoghi Effendi himself, Sulh-e-Akbar, and Sulh-e-Azam, the most great peace. Shoghi Effendi has compressed this in his English letters, just two, to simplify things for us. Now, as I said, the middle one is Sulh-e-Akbar. Yeah? It's very interesting that when Baha'u'llah met Brown, E.G. Brown, in the mansion in Baji, it's a very interesting point. You know, he has translated, he has used the word most great peace. And in the translations that we have received and are published, unfortunately, the most great peace mentioned by Brown in his translation of what Baha'u'llah said, we have put it Sulh-e-Azam, which is the term used for the most great peace in the writings of Shoghi Effendi. But the notes of Brown when he was in the presence of Baha'u'llah have been found. And he has written in his own handwriting. He has not written everything that Baha'u'llah has. He's jotted down certain basic points. When it comes to this most great peace, it is Sulh-e-Akbar, not Sulh-e-Azam. He has translated it most great peace. And now when we ourselves are retranslating from the English, we have put Sulh-e-Azam. Whereas what truly he has written down in his notes, Sulh-e-Akbar, which is the middle kind of peace, between the lesser peace and the most great peace. So I think it is very clear that there are three, but Shoghi Effendi had compressed it. When it is three, then the middle one would be a number of nations. When it is the most great peace, it is a majority of all the nations. The Bab frequently said, everything in between heaven and earth. What is this? What does this mean? I have not seen anything in the writings of Baha'u'llah or Abdul Baha or Shoghi Effendi himself or the Bab himself for that matter this question of in-between. Actually, this in-between has come from the Quran. It's a verse in the Quran. So what the Bab is doing, he's quoting the Quran. Now, so there is nothing authentic. But if you want me to offer you my humble opinion, of course I will. But it does not mean it's correct. It means that it is Ali's opinion. Finita la musica. So I think all these terms are analogies. They are metaphors. They are not the real solid thing. Heaven, when he speaks about heaven and earth, yeah, that's right. When he speaks about heaven and earth, it's an analogy. Heaven and earth, and it's between them. This is an example. The earth is round, its atmosphere, anything above it is up and down and everywhere. How can there be something in between, from down and from up? This means something. Now, what I understand is this, that the earth refers to the world of creation. All of us, all the population of the world. That's the world of creation. Heaven is the heaven of religion, as Baha'u'llah says in the Kitab-i-Iqan. It's the heaven of divine revelation. So between divine revelation, Baha'u'llah, Christ, Muhammad, Moses, Buddha, etc. Between the divine revelation and us, there is something in between. That's the covenant. I believe it means the covenant, nothing else. It refers, in Baha'i terminology, it refers to Abdul Baha, center of the covenant. It refers to Shoghi Effendi as the authority to whom all must turn, the sign of God. And it refers to the Universal House of Justice, again, the authority to whom all must turn. There is a difference in the terms that are used in the writings. There is the word inspiration and revelation. In those of you who speak Persian and Arabic, it's the difference between ilham, or in Persian, ilham, and revelation, wahy, or Persian, vahy. Vahy is heaven. The earth is us. Between us is ilham, inspiration. The founder of the faith, his successors, his lawful, authorized, authoritative successors in authority, not in rank, in authority. And the human world, we, the community. So I think that is my understanding of these terms. I would like also to share with you, before we plunge into the questions, something I remembered about my uncle. My maternal uncle was a lover of the cause, if I may put it that way. And he had seen Baha'u'llah. He had been in the presence of Baha'u'llah. He had, of course, been in the presence of Abdul Baha, as well as Shoghi Effendi. And he died in the Holy Land and is buried in the Baha'i cemetery in Haifa. This dear uncle of mine told me this little story that I would like to share with you. He said, as I have already told you, that every day the Abdul Baha met with the local friends and the pilgrims in the Biruni of the house of Abdullah Pasha. I think I made reference to that. Then he said one day the regular program was carried out. After it was all over, Abdul Baha did not stand up to leave the meeting. He remained seated And he had his eyes closed. And he said, those of us who were in the room were wondering, why isn't he leaving the room? Because obviously the prayers, the readings, his own message to the friends, this was all over. And it was the natural time for him to stand up and leave the room. And so everybody was surprised. There was silence, of course, and everybody wondering what's happening. After a while, he opened his eyes and addressed the friends. He said one sentence and left the room. And everybody, of course, dispersed after that. And the sentence was this, as best as he could recall it. He says, whatever has happened in the world and whatever will happen in the world, the friends should be well assured that such developments have all been happening and they will happen in the future in accordance with the will, the all-pervasive, the all-compelling will of Baha'u'llah. And the purpose of all these developments that are occurring in the world today is one thing, and that is the triumph of the cause of Baha'u'llah. And they stood up and left the room. Of course, it was very dramatic, and it sunk into the hearts of all those who were attending. So you see, my point is that later Shoghi Effendi taught us a new word. He used the word major plan of Baha'u'llah. He referred to the minor plan and to the major plan. Abdul Baha was referring to the major plan of Baha'u'llah for the whole planet. I thought I would to share with you this experience. Now we come to the questions. I hope there will be time for all the questions. I'll try my best. And you have to excuse me if I'm brief on some of the questions. There are a lot of questions here. How do we obtain the ability to focus during meditation? It is difficult, but don't be easily discouraged. If you want to have complete 100% focus of your mind and your heart when a prayer is read by you or by others, I don't know, I think it's almost impossible. So don't be easily discouraged. This happens. We are human beings. Don't blame yourself too much. Do your best. Continue focusing. It will become easier all the time. Can we pray directly to God without an intercessor? Yeah. Shoghi Effendi has written that it is, if you want to pray to God directly, go ahead and pray to God directly. It's a letter from Shoghi Effendi. Now, but there is something that I have to share with you, and you must have heard about it before, undoubtedly. It's about Mr. Maxwell. Mr. and Mrs. Maxwell were in the presence of Abdul Baha. They came together in the year 1909. And at dinner, they were the only two pilgrims. At dinner time, Sutherland Maxwell said to Abdul Baha, he said, the Christians pray to God through Jesus Christ. My wife prays to God through you. I pray to God directly. So when Abdul Baha heard this, he said, and where is God? His answer was classic, to be expected by an intelligent person like Sutherland Maxwell. God is everywhere. Abdul Baha's answer, everywhere. Everywhere is nowhere. Then he continued. He said, what you are praying to, you think it is God, is a fiction of your own imagination. There's no point. Prayer needs a point. And it's impossible to put God in one point for you to direct your prayers. He said that a savage living in the jungle is closer to God when he turns his prayers and to a rock a piece of rock, or a tree, because these are creations of God. But when you pray directly, you want to say directly to God, you are praying to the fiction of your own imagination. Mrs. Maxwell has written that when Sutherland heard this, he bowed his head. She says, I believe that that's when he became a true Baha'i. He had been a Baha'i, but when he heard this, he bowed his head and said, I believe that's when Sutherland became a true Baha'i in 1909. So I'm telling you this because we have heard it over and over again, and I'm sure Ruhi Khanum must have spoken about it in conferences. You may have heard it from her directly in conferences. Now, the reason is this. When Shoghi Effendi says, if you want to pray to God, all right, pray to God. It shows the openness of the pen and mind and spirit of Shoghi Effendi. However, it is so much better to have a point to which you can turn, obviously. And that is the manifestation of it. So we turn our prayers to manifestation of it. If we find it easier to turn to Abdul Baha is fine. To Shoghi Effendi says, even me you can turn. To the greatest holy leaf you can turn. These are the intercessors. To other souls, other departed, sanctified souls, you can turn. To your own parents who have passed away, you can turn. So there is such flexibility in our teachings on this particular subject. What advice would you give to parents struggling to ensure that their children become strong and dedicated Baha'is? Who am I to give you such advice? However, I think that there are two things. Your children should be encouraged to be active in the community. In whatever area that they want to do, they must be active in the community. They must teach the cause, encourage them to teach the cause. In order to encourage them to teach the cause, you as parents, you should be active in the community as well. They look at you. If you are inactive, they say, why should we be active? And they are right. If you are not teaching the cause, and they don't see that you are teaching the cause, how do you expect them to teach the cause? They should have the courage to teach the cause. They follow you as parents. They want to know how you are. So this is very important. The other thing I think that has to be done is to make sure that your children or your child realizes that they should not befriend people that they think are behaving in a way contrary to the faith, to the teachings of our faith. Let them be selective in their friendships, in their associations. Warn them against that, so that they understand what it is that there are certain boys or girls who act in a different way, totally un-Baha'i way, in terms of immorality, in terms of chastity, in terms of bad manners. Not to mix with such people, but mix with people who have a spirit, and from the way they are acting, it's in harmony with the teachings of the faith. Warn them and encourage them. So I think these things will probably be of great help. Aid me to be detached from all things within thy holy precincts, to explain what is meant. Now this is, I think, a very important sentence in the tablet of visitation of the beloved Master. He talks about selflessness, of course. He talks about being like a dust in the pathway of God's beloved ones, yes. But then there is this sentence. What does it mean? I'm giving you my personal feeling. It may be right, it may be wrong. You should arrive at your own conclusions. I think it means that when you have become a Baha'i, or you are already a Baha'i, and you want to be active in the cause, and you enter the community and you are active, These are, I think, the precincts of his course. There are tests. That means we, as members of the Baha'i community, within the community there are tests. And that's where we have to be wide awake. What is the type of tests? I think the most important of all is that we have ranks, positions, functions in the Baha'i community. And we cannot avoid it. We have the administrative order. We have a hierarchy. We have to have hierarchy. Hierarchy calls for ranks and positions. That's it. We cannot avoid that. In fact, Abdul Baha gives the example of an army. And the army has a general, from the general down to the soldier. But in between there is a whole hierarchy. Okay, so we can't avoid that. We can't criticize that. But the question is that the ego within me says, oh, how wonderful, I want to be higher up, higher up, higher up. I was yesterday with the children. During the question period, someone raised, one of the child, he must have been about 7 or 8 years old. He said, what shall I do? I want to become a member of the Universal House of Justice. Tell us what. Now, within the holy precincts, there is this test. A person wants to be a member of the Universal House of Justice. And he's asking advice from this humble one, what shall I do? As a child. So the test is there, even for the child, is there. If it is for him, it is for all of us. Seeking ranks and positions, on the one hand, is wrong. On the other, to consider yourself. If I am elected or I'm appointed, okay, I'll try my best. It's not my purpose. My purpose is something else. My purpose is that He is pleased with me. Not that I am being given a position or rank. No. That position and rank, set it aside. If it happens, okay. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter. Teaching the course does not require ranks, for God's sake. Finding receptive souls does not require ranks. It requires prayer. It requires humility. It requires devotion. That's what it requires. We become then magnets. We attract. That's what is important. Not having positions and ranks and wanting. If it comes, okay, that's it. Sometimes the very position and rank that is given to some of us, or to me, for example, could be a test for me. So I have to be fully aware. This is only my understanding. You may come to your own conclusions. God bless you. How can a person attain certitude? Yeah, that's a very good question. You see, there is a difference between faith and assurance or certitude. Those of you who speak Persian and Arabic, the difference is between iman and iqan. We have kitab-e-iqan. Faith is recognition of the manifestation of God. It's the beginning. It's like the seed being planted. That's what it is. Certitude or assurance in when it becomes a tree with fruit. Iman is just the beginning of a process. Iqan is the primary purpose of our lives, is to attain certitude. Now, how to attain certitude depends on every one of us. You may attain certitude through your own efforts. You may attain certitude through a dream. That God loves you and you love Him, and He comes to you in a dream and gives you something, says something, you get an experience. You don't need anybody to tell you anything. You immediately, in less than 24 hours, you have the certitude, because you have had this particular dream. We are all different. But the aim should be to develop my faith and allow it to become assurance or certitude. That is my journey. Not to be satisfied that I am a Baha'i, I know that I am a Baha'i. Actually, I'm proud that I am a Baha'i. This is not enough. I have registered that I'm a Baha'i, yes. I love Baha'u'llah, of course. But what do I do? Almost nothing. Do I sacrifice for Baha'u'llah? Why should I? After all, I've become a Baha'i. I am saved. No, you are not saved. The first paragraph of the Kitab-i-Iqan says, you are not saved. You are saved only if you live the Baha'i life, plus your recognition. Therefore, the journey is service. The journey is teaching the cause, serving the cause, participating in Baha'i activities continuously. That's the regular path we all have to tread. Now, if in the meantime you get a dream, fine, God bless you. That's a blessing. But you may not have a dream. You have to carry on. You have to plod on. You have tried your best. Carry on. Every day. Make the effort. Be aware that you have to grow. That your evening, Baha'u'llah says, should be better than your morning. Because a plant is growing. And the plant is growing. You measure it in the morning, you measure it at night, you measure it the next day, it has grown. So I think that is the thing we have to be aware, that the majority of humanity must make their efforts every day. And it should be done selflessly, not selfishly, selflessly. For His sake, not for my own personal sake, for His sake. He is pleased, that's it. He knows, it's enough. He sees, it's enough. That's all. When service is done in this spirit, then we grow. Then faith becomes certitude. When will the lesser peace come? You see, they think I'm a prophet, as I told the greatest audience. When will the lesser peace come? And what is the connection to the year 2000? What are the signs of the lesser peace? Yeah. Okay, this is a very good question, basically. I think I mentioned to you yesterday that in the writings of Baha'u'llah, we have three pieces. The lesser peace, the great peace as translated by Shoghi Effendi, and the most great peace. The lesser peace is the political peace, nothing to do with the faith as such, although propelled by the forces released by the revelation of Baha'u'llah, of course. But it's not a Baha'i peace. It is a political peace. It is a point of maturation of the human race, to realize that they cannot go on having war. When you read the writings of Shoghi Effendi clearly, you see that he, in the goal of a new world order, for example, he makes a point which I think is basic, a point that we should understand when we are teaching the cause, a point which the world needs to know. And alas, it has not reached that stage yet. It's a fundamental principle in the writings of Baha'u'llah that Shoghi Effendi has pulled out for us and explained it to us. It is a very simple thing, but sometimes we lose our focus and we don't know where it is. But it is the point when the nations of the world will realize that there must be a curtailment, a limitation, even if necessary, a forced curtailment of national sovereignty. That's it. If you read The Goal of a New World Order carefully, you see this thing emerging. National sovereignty means I am independent. I do what I please in my country. No one has the right to interfere in the affairs of my country. That's national sovereignty. Today, the problems, let us say, in the Middle East, particularly in Syria, have not been resolved, although so many thousands have been killed on both sides. Why? It's because of national sovereignty. The Syrian government says, I'm independent. I do what I like. Don't interfere in my affairs. National sovereignty. What is needed is putting limits to national sovereignty. And that can be done only when the nations of the world all realize that this type of politics is not going to work anymore. There should be limits must be imposed on national sovereignty. Certain rights, certain privileges, which are the rights, if you like, of every nation, should be given up, should be ceded in favor of a bigger unit, which is a world government. The United Nations today is weak. The United Nations today has no teeth. It has recommendations, yes, but subject to national sovereignty. It doesn't work. It will not work. It will work only when, through suffering, unfortunately, human race will reach a point when we have to curtail this. And this has happened in the past. You know, families became tribes. How? Through wars between families. Finally they decided, let's get together. Tribes fought with each other, with one another. Why? Because they wanted to preserve their national or tribal sovereignty. Curtailed that, they had city-state. All kinds mixed together within the city. Cities begin to have wars. And the only way for us to stop our wars is to have a nation, which is a combination, a unity or a union, if you like, of all the various city-states within that particular area, which becomes an independent nation. Now, a similar thing must happen here when we want to move higher up to world government. Not national government, not city-state government, not tribal government, but world government. As in the past there has been this curtailment, this should continue. This is what is basically the message of Baha'u'llah concerning the conditions of the world. If we reread and re-study the goal of a new world order, this thing would become very clear. So when this point happens, that is the lesser peace. As to the part of the question about the 2000, there is, of course, as you know, the tablet revealed by Abdul Baha, which is known as the tablet of the 7 candles. Now, one of the candles of unity is the unity of nations. But unity of nations has been thought of by many friends and so on, that this is the lesser peace. It was not the lesser peace, because Abdul Baha says, but this unity of nations will occur within this century, which was the past century, before the end of this 2000, the 20th century. We are in the 21st century. The lesser peace did not come. So what Abdul Baha meant could not be the lesser peace. What Abdul Baha meant was something else, perhaps, because he himself defines it. He says, that is the time when the peoples of the world would consider the entire earth as their home, one homeland, one fatherland. Considering the peoples of the world, considering the earth as one home is not the same thing as agreeing to curtail national sovereignty. They are two different things. And there's a sense of awareness that, we are all one after all. Abdul Baha says this will happen during the 20th century. It did happen. I remember myself, I know I'm straying from the main subject, but I just want to tell you this, how I felt. I was reading Life magazine. The first astronaut to arrive on the moon, and the pictures that they took of our Earth. I opened Life magazine. For the first time, I saw a picture of Earth. It's blue. You see the continents. You see the oceans. You see even some of the clouds over this wonderful planet which is ours. I said to myself, wow, when this picture was taken, I was on that planet. I started looking. Can I find I was, of course, at the time in the Middle East. Can I find the Middle East on this picture? Can I find Israel on this picture? Of course, it was impossible. I knew roughly where I would be in this picture. The planet became my home. I realized that this is my home. This is for all of us. We live all together. This awareness maybe did not exist. Of course, we would go to school and they would draw for us on the blackboard a circle. They say, this is the Earth. But it's a drawing. It's a sketch. This is the moon. These are the other planets. Okay, this is the solar system. It's all drawings. For the first time, I see a picture of the planet in color. That, believe me, made a major change in my life. I really understood that, I am a citizen of the world. This earth belongs to me and I belong to it. I think maybe this is what Abdul Baha meant, that during that century, things like this will happen, which will enable humanity to realize that this earth is one home.